Raise your hand if you ever had an idea that you wanted to turn into a business. Now put your hand down if you abandoned that idea just after a few Google searches. Look around, you're not alone. It's a journey familiar to many of us where the initial sparks of innovation meet the daunting roadblocks of execution. Today, I want to talk about what stops students from turning their ideas into businesses. Let's explore some of the obstacles that students face so that you can turn your could have beens into have dones. Over the last 4 years, I've had the privilege of starting 2 companies. I started my first company when I was 17, and I managed to scale that business to be able to partially fund my university. And during my freshman year at the University of Manchester, I started my second company called Arcube. In just less than 12 months, we managed to scale our business to be generating multiple 6 figures in revenue and have a 7-figure valuation without having any external investors. Even though I'm not a seasoned entrepreneur, my journey so far has put me in a unique position to see and understand how students go about starting their businesses, and more importantly, what stops them from taking those first few steps. Here at the university, I'm part of an accelerator program. And an accelerator program is where a student goes to test their idea to turn it into an early stage company with some mentorship and funding. At this accelerator, my role is to listen to the ideas that students bring forward and evaluate if they can be turned into a viable business. Over the last 2 years, I managed to hear over 150 ideas that students brought forward. And when I asked them, what is preventing you from turning your idea into a business? These are the 3 most common responses that I hear. Number 1, I don't know if my idea is good enough. Number 2, I don't have the resources to start a business. And number 3, I lack the knowledge and expertise as a student to start and run a business. So let's explore how I personally overcame these obstacles and several entrepreneurs whom I admire tackle these very challenges. So let's dive a bit deeper into if you find yourself thinking, what should I do if I don't know my idea is good enough? The way that most students go about starting a business or coming up with an idea is to take a step back and start to introspect what they do in their day-to-day lives. And introspection is always a great place to start. Having done this twice already, let me tell you how I would do it again. So let me put myself in the shoes of an entrepreneur who's trying to brainstorm a business idea. Hypothetically, I take a notepad and start brainstorming ideas, and a few minutes in, I realize that the university software that we use every day to watch lectures is often crashing. It never has the correct subtitles, and I find myself often adjusting the speed of the video to actually use my time efficiently. Now that I've pinpointed a problem, I would try and develop a software that uses, let's say, AI to come up with precise captions that is more reliable and auto-adjust the speed of the video to my preferences. Now that I have an idea and a solution, the doubt seeps in. I don't know if my idea is good enough. And this is where most people stop. So the way that they can go about it is you can start talking to customers. And in the customer or an end user, in this case, would be the student who are using the software on a daily basis. You can start by asking them open-ended questions to avoid introducing any bias. And this step is crucial because one of the most common pitfalls that a young entrepreneur could fall into is making the assumption that everyone experiences a problem the same way they do. And this could be fundamentally fatal to your business. After assessing the scope of the problem, the way that I would go about is start talking to customers and guess their willingness to pay for the solution. In this scenario, even though the students would be the ones using this university software, the end customer is the university, as I need to convince them to be paying for the solution. So I would combine the data that I collect from the students and take it to the university to convey the urgency of the problem. And then I would try and judge if they're actually willing to pay for my solution. Now let's say I sense some demand. The next step that I would take is start talking to entrepreneurs who have either managed to successfully manage previously or even currently working on a business in the sector that I want to establish my company in. During this stage, I would be cautious and take any advice that comes my way with a grain of salt, because you should be mindful that you can never truly replicate another business blueprint or take universally generic advice and try and apply it to your own situation. Now that I've talked to customers, now that I've talked to end users and founders, you might think I'm in a good enough place to start my business. However, this is where most people stop. Young entrepreneurs tend to enter a state of decision paralysis where they start chasing after that perfect business idea and that perfect business plan and that perfect time to start a business, which never comes. And this could be self-sabotaging. So let me put it bluntly. It is nearly impossible to know with absolute certainty if your business idea is going to work solely based on theory. And you should not fixate on having that perfect business plan before starting your business, because every single business is bound to pivot. The magnitude of this pivot might vary, but it is bound to happen. For example, Twitter started as audio, a platform where you can explore and subscribe to podcasts. YouTube started as an online dating site called TuneIn to hook up. And Shopify was started as an e-commerce store called Snow Devil, where you could buy snowboarding equipment. And after the founders found the e-commerce solutions available in the market dissatisfactory, they pivoted to create Shopify. Now that you have received some positive validation for your idea, and considering that pivoting is an inevitable part of your business, the only logical steps that you can take to actually find out if your business is worth converting into if your idea is worth converting into a business, is to take the leap of faith and start working on it. Now, the second hurdle that a lot of entrepreneurs might face is, I don't know if I have the resources to start a business. When I founded Arcube during my first year at university, it took us 8 months from when we first came up with the idea to when we first found a paying client. And during these 8 months, we were constrained on capital, talent, and mentorship. And I believe it was precisely these constraints that drove innovation during the early days of Arcube. This might be a controversial opinion, but I strongly believe that students are in a better position to secure funding, mentorship, and talent than when you're starting up in any other later stages of your life. Firstly, universities are hubs of innovation where you can find intellectual and materials. These institutions often have grants, incubators, and accelerators, just like the one I'm part of here at the university. They tend to offer students mentorship and funding without expecting any equity in return. And when it comes to funding, the way that we went about Arcube is that for the first 2 years at Arcube, we have consciously made a decision not to raise any external investment to dilute our ownership. Instead, we decided to stick with personal savings, grants, and winning competitions to fund our business. And the reason that we have decided this is that we wanted to gain some initial traction in the market before we actually get any investors on board. And if you're building a business, especially a tech company, it is inevitable for you to raise capital. However, you need to keep in mind that you can always find a middle ground between having to raise capital and giving away ownership, and also managing to successfully scale a business. So you can use a similar approach, what we have used at Arcube. So at Arcube, we managed to find out the potential of blockchain technology very early. And we have leveraged this and started working with several large brands such as Etihad Airways to help them navigate in the blockchain industry. And we have provided a service in the industry for the last 2 years and helped to build some initial traction, momentum, and build a strong financial foundation that helped us to stay self-sufficient and profitable over the last 2 years. So you can take a similar approach where you can start by providing a service in an industry where you're interested to start your company in and build some initial traction before you get any investors on board. That way, you can find a middle ground between having to give away your equity early and also being able to build a scalable company. Now, coming to student talent, I believe that student talent could be a game changer for startups. Usually, you'd be surprised at the number of students you can find in a university setting that are as ambitious and as hungry as success for you are. If you take an industry hire, they might have more experience than a student hire. However, you have to remember that ambition can definitely outweigh experience, at least during the early stage of a startup, because your company is purely operating on the basis of faith, hope, optimism, and sometimes even delusion. And now coming to mentorship. Before starting Arcube, I had the misconception that why would a successful entrepreneur or an executive give you the time of their day when you're number one, you're a student and you haven't proven anything tangible in real life, and number two, you are not providing any value to them short term. However, I was wrong. Over the last 2 years at Arcube, we managed to put together a board of advisors from companies like Meta, HSBC, Lloyds, and the government of UAE. And how we did this was very simple and straightforward. All we had to do was just reach out and ask. It could be as simple as sending a LinkedIn message, and you'd be surprised at the number of executives and established founders willing to provide you advice, no strings attached. I strongly believe that it's underrated how far just an interesting story and ambition can take you. Now let's say you have come up with an idea, you have validated the solution, and you manage to get some initial traction and funding together. The self-doubt comes back. I lack the knowledge and expertise as a student to start and run a business. While this is understandable, let's consider this. The notion that people at large corporations are the sole proprietors of innovation is a myth. The notion that innovation is limited to the boardrooms of Fortune 500 is a myth. And in true innovation is found in the dorm rooms of the curious and determined. Over the last few years, I managed to have conversations with several high-level executives at larger corporations, and I managed to observe a pattern. Some of the executives that I've spoken to often lack the ability to take a step back and actually see how one part of their business affects the other. And I believe this is the exact unfair advantage that students have because lack of knowledge also comes with lack of preconceived notions and bias. And when you're a student entrepreneur, either when you're starting an early stage startup or you're working at an early stage startup, this experience could be invaluable because when you're a student entrepreneur, you're the CEO, the marketer, the product manager, and also the customer service representative. Being an outsider in an industry comes with its perks, where it allows you to take a step back and start thinking from first principles. And it'll help you question the fundamentals and assumptions of things, about how things actually work. Now let's take a moment to think about all the hands that shot up in the air with bright ideas and the ones that immediately folded back down. Stop questioning if you have the perfect business plan, or if you have a good enough idea, or you have a resource to start a business. If you're a student looking to start a business, the only way you can go about it is to leverage the resources and knowledge you have as of today and just get started, and there is no other way around it.